Turn around 5, we're going to go to John Pacenti. John, this comes out of the Key Biscayne Independent. You wrote it. I'm going to ask you to provide some insights. I'll read the headline for a couple graphs, and then we'll take it from there. Headline: It's out of control. Condo reform gaining steam in Tallahassee. Before I go ahead and read the first couple graphs, let me just remind the audience, we had the collapse of a condominium on the Barrier Island in Miami-Dade County, a tower called Champaign Tower South. It collapsed, nearly 100 people died. $1 billion was ultimately paid out to the families of those who ultimately perished. Legislation was changed or put in place in order to get insurance companies to take a chance financing some of these older buildings. But insurance companies have to pass along some of these costs that they had. So everyone's insurance is going up. We've also had hurricanes. We've had an increase in property values. Therefore, insurance companies have a lot more risk. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of contention right now in some of these associations that for the longest time were able to defer doing necessary rehab. But since the disaster that occurred in Surfside, the state's no longer allowing that. It's actually asking for reserves. So we've been documenting during the course of season 4 of our podcast a lot of internal strife that's going on in some of these associations. So that's the overview. So John, headline again: It's out of control. Condo reform gaining steam in Tallahassee. And here's the first couple graphs, and I want you to comment. After a workshop on condo fraud and corruption ended on Friday, dozens of residents of high-rises throughout South Florida swarmed the podium. They wanted to tell their tale of woe about their condo board to either State Senator Jason Pizzo or Miami-Dade Assistant State Attorney John Pacenti. Some talked about how condo boards got perks from vendors. Others spoke about how elections were stolen. Many talked about how they could not get financial records from the board. Both Pizzo and Pacenti listened patiently at the Aventura event, but they didn't sugarcoat the situation during the 2-hour panel discussion. All leverage remains with the board. The law remains vague and weak, and the agency in charge of protecting condo residents is worse than toothless. It's apathetic, they said. John, why don't you give us some take about what the legislature might be willing to consider in our upcoming session in 2024, what the situation's like from maybe some of the people you're talking to who live in these condo associations, have had to deal with it, and just sort of set the scene and the climate for the audience.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to chew on this issue. Basically, the legislature has tried to deal with the aftermath of Surfside and trying to, deal with, the lack of reserves that some of these condo boards were, kind of kicking the can down the road there, and not doing maintenance and not doing what needed to be done. And now they're putting in some safeguards to make sure that we don't have another Surfside. That's basically what the last 2 sessions have been dealing with. But in the meantime, there have been these rogue homeowner associations and condo associations that continue to just basically go unchecked. And State Attorney Catherine Fernandez-Rundle has really been kind of in the driver's seat here. She impaneled a grand jury a couple years ago, and it came back scathing, saying that the state is allowing rampant fraud, election fraud, padding vendor contracts, and also when residents said, "Hey, you're corrupt, you can't do this," then the board would turn their attorneys on those residents. And so the Department of Business and Professional Regulation is supposed to be kind of have the condo residents back, but that agency has been less than toothless. In fact, it's almost been complicit. It has been complicit. Okay. And so now, this legislation, there was a bill that's already been, I think we're going to give multiple bills, both from Republicans and Democrats. This one bill is trying to move that over to the AG area, I mean, DBPR, what do they regulate? Nail manicurists,
masseuse,
as well as
masseuse, real estate brokers.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little unwieldy. And they basically just tell residents they're on their own. And the corrupt condo board know this. Now, let me just give you an example of how this has. I mean, of course, we have the situation down in Kendall, the homeowner association down there that was basically a criminal, has been charged with being a criminal organization. Here on Key Biscayne, we had a property manager stealing maintenance checks, just taking and putting out. She created a fake company, or is alleged to of creating a fake company, and alleged to have funneled money into the residents' money into their account. And then the property management company would go to these residents and say, "Hey, you're in arrears. We're going to file a lien. We're going,
Oh,
and they're like, "What are you talking about? Here's my checks." Okay. Now, how emboldened are these boards? Well, when Representative Vicky Lopez held a town hall on the issue on Key Biscayne and said, "I'm coming with Condo 3.0 this session. We are going to fix this problem." The former president, who under her watch that this money was stolen from this board, said, "Oh, I don't think I agree with this. I don't agree with this so-called Condo 3.0. I think the problem is residents who are who are in arrears." And the fact is, the residents weren't in arrears. The money was being stolen from them. So that's just one. That's just one little snippet of what's going on. And really, if I could, if Tony Winton, my boss, we would do nothing but really just dive into this arena, because it's we could basically do nothing but condo news, looking into these condo
John,
boards. But
so John, quick question. Back in the day during the Great Recession, when I was going after distressed condos, one of the things that we did is we were analyzing condos. We were rating them based on where they stood and things like that. We took a run at rating condominiums and making that information available, much like an appraisal. So if you're going into do an appraisal on a unit, you could also get like our assessment, kind of like you would get on Wall Street, like a credit rating agency type of situation. And one of the things we ran into is publicly available information. Shine a light. We are the Sunshine State. We have the Sunshine Law. John Gruss, who's on the podcast, he always talks about, listen, you want to deal with it? Simply shine a light on it. You don't necessarily need more people to be doing stuff. Just make the records available. The market, at least from the first step, they might actually be able to sort of suss it out. And if a condo starts to free fall in value, because everybody knows there's some shady stuff going on, isn't that going to prompt a change in directors? Is that going to prompt a movement? So I guess my question to you, John, is anything been spoken about simply making the financials readily available at the risk that some condos will simply go up in value because they're well run, and some will go down, just like any company that's traded on Wall Street?
Well, there's going to be part of this proposed legislation, and it will be opposed by the law firms that represent these boards and these property management companies, is to require that there be a repository of financial information that is being posted on a website. Okay. And so, and are you ready for this? And if a resident goes, "Hey, I want to see the last, the last budget. I want to see the last time our accountants looked at our numbers. I want to see these reports." And the board says, "No, we're not going to give it to you." And then the state, under this new law, goes, "Okay, give it to them now." And if they don't give it to them, those board members might be held criminally liable. That's what they're talking about now, because they're so tired of them hiding the information.
Well, just to throw it out there, in order to be a property manager, you got to get a license. Why not just deputize the property managers, much like the Fed deputizes the bank to know their customers? And if something pops up, then the state can always come in after the fact. So put the onus on the property manager. And if an association simply self-governs, it's just something they need to do. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
It's like the fox guarding the hen house. I mean, I don't know. A little bit. I mean, why, property managers, there's bad ones too, as John just pointed out. So I think if you made the financial records, condo financial records, a sunshine document publicly available for everyone to see, not just residents, but prospective buyers, investors, the public,
The lenders.
the lenders, anybody. And you wouldn't even have to ask for the board. They would have to disclose it publicly on this website. I mean, that would go a huge, long way to improving the situation, because then the light would be shined on those poorly performing condo associations and the ones that are not maintaining reserves, that are not that have clearly problem financial statements that are riddled with problems.
Well, are you ready for the? So this property manager, who was an employee of a property management company, what do you think that the condominium did with that property management company? Do you think that they fired them? No, they did not. So I haven't.
I mean, that's crazy.
So instead, I know. So instead, the residents oust in an election the president and the vice president that was there when this theft occurred, and then the new president then brings them back to run litigation committees and a debt committee and a board member who says, look, we need to bring in a forensic, we need to do a forensic audit. And they're like, no, we don't think so. And another thing is and then the police and prosecutors have a problem because a lot of residents on Key Biscayne are South Americans that are here, and they don't even own the condominium, right? Maybe it's an LLC that owns it. They're working for a financial company. They'll do 5 or 7 years here in Miami, and then maybe move on to Spain or wherever, back to and they're like, hey, we need you to do a police report, and they're like, oh, I don't think so, no. And so they're like, well, we can't do anything if you're not going to file a police report. But we had come across somebody who had got about $26,000 had been stolen from him he said, by this property manager.
Wow.
But
fascinating story, John. Anybody who's interested in condo associations, I would tell you the work that John's doing over at Key Biscayne Independent, kbindependent.org. It's been fantastic on the associations, John. So thank you for that insight. I'd also throw out, before we go to the next story, keep in mind, a lot of and I was on the condo board, I served on there. A lot of this is volunteer work. So you're not actually compensated. So that might be the issue, because people aren't compensated. They sort of wet their beak elsewhere. So it's something to keep in mind.